Hello friends, welcome back to the next session on operations planning, scheduling and control. Now let's begin with our learning. In this particular session, we'll be dealing with the concept of systems and processes. The learning objectives. In this particular session, you will be able to understand and learn what do we mean by operations management, what are the various systems and processes that are being undertaken in operations management. Now let's first understand what do we mean by operations system and processes. Operation system and processes is the process of implementing operation system in order to mitigate the risk and minimize the losses in the organization. So at every stage, an organization is looking or aiming or forecasting for the losses and is also looking for a certain concern in which the losses can be minimized. So a process or a series of activities which has been undertaken for controlling the risk that can be arised over a period of time, and the activities that have been initiated to control the risk and minimize the loss in the organization is called the operations system and processes. The operation system and processes are specialized, designed, structured and implemented required for the effective plant layout. Now, when we say that there is a manufacturing concern or a particular unit, there is always a series or flow of activities. This particular series or flow of activities is being carried out according to the plant layout which is into existence. That is, the goods are being moving from one place to another place. And in those particular movement of goods and services, it needs to be designed in a particular way that all the activities are being done in a specialized sequence in a proper timely way, and accordingly the activities are being structured and implemented as and when they are being required. So the requirement of goods and services should be timely achieved, should be qualitative, should be quantitative, and so on. And hence, when we have a proper set of systems and processes into existence, all those activities are being conducted in a very effective way. These particular activities that we are conducting in the operations management should always be well coordinated activity, and the flow of path should be predefined. When the flow of path is being predefined, then accordingly the movement or transfer of goods and services from one place to another place, from one department to another department, from one machine to another machine takes place very effectively, and accordingly the operational activity is being smoothly undertaken. So for smooth functioning of activities of the production or processing in the manufacturing organization, operation system and process is essentially required. Now let's understand the procedure or activities that are being performed in the operations system. So in this particular diagram, you can see that the four activities are being conducted in the major way. The first one is the concept of planning. Then we have the control. Then we need to take the review, and then lastly the forecast. The concept of planning focuses on first initially we need to plan what activities are being needed to undertaken in an organization. That is the requirement of goods, the procurement of goods, the preparation of the invoices, and lastly the receipt of goods in the stores or the warehouse. So when all those planning are being undertaken, there is an actual input of goods in the organization. When the goods have been received, that is the raw material is been received, then it is been further processed and accordingly it is been sent to the manufacturing department. While they are sending the goods to the manufacturing department, we have to understand and deal with the controlling activities. The controlling activities with respect to the quality, quantity, disbursement and amount of availability of goods and services for the manufacturing is needed to be undertaken. Review. The review of activities focuses on what amount or quality and quantity of goods and services have been utilized, whether as per the need of the production department they are quite sufficient and fulfilled, and the data that has been required is been processed or not. And lastly, forecasting. That is based on your actual need, based on your actual requirement, whether the production or manufacturing activity is being undertaken or not. Now, these particular activities are series of activities with respect to planning, controlling, reviewing, and forecast is based on three fundamentals. The first fundamental is the quantification. Quantification specifically identifies about the quantity of product that is needed to be manufactured. So, based on the quantity of input in the organization, the quantity of output will be decided. Now, let's take an example at this particular stage. That is, when you purchase a material of 100 kg or 1000 kg or a ton, then accordingly the output of that particular product will be in a certain quantity. That is, in terms of the 100 kg, the finished goods may be around for 90 kg or 95 kg. If for a ton, that is for 1000 kg, maybe around 900 kg or 950 kg and so on. So quantifications deals with what is the actual amount of physical goods available with you and what amount of goods are being wasted as a part of a scrap. So quantification is essentially required about how many goods or services have been required and what is the actual product that has been received. Collaboration. Collaboration is a particular concern with respect to the coordination of activities between the various departments, the floor layout, the plant layout, and so on. So, a proper series or a sequence of activities is needed to be undertaken. And for those particular concern, collaboration between all the departments is essentially required, and we have to see that they are being well communicated in advance. Optimization. The concept of optimization focuses on the concept of optimum utilization of resources. That is, the resources that we are trying to use are always limited and scarcely available. So, those resources should be effectively utilized and should be seen that there is no wastage of resources in the organization. Now, let's see what are the prerequisites for the systems and processes that needs to be implemented. The first step that we need to identify is in identifying the gap assessment. So, what are the various gaps that is there in the organization should be initially identified, and then on those particular concerns, the assessment is needed to be undertaken. The gap assessment with respect to the shop floor, with respect to the department, with respect to the availability of resources, with respect to the amount of goods and services that are into existence, all those things are needed to be assigned, they are needed to be identified, and then we have to understand about what activities and goods and services are needed to be performed. The second activity that needs to be undertaken is setting the standards to the management system. So the management system or the production system or the operational system which is into existence, for those particular concern, the standards are needed to be set. Those particular standards may be about changes in goods and services, availability of goods and services, and process or flow of goods and services. And hence, in this case, the prerequisite is needed to be found that what management system is into existence and how do we set the standards for our product. The next prerequisite is leadership awareness sessions. So, certain sessions with respect to the leadership qualities, availability, or increasing in the knowledge of the managers, the supporting staff, the shop floor people, and so on is needed to be undertaken, and accordingly, it is to be seen that the skill, knowledge, and talent of the people is essentially improved or developed. Mapping the regulatory requirements. So whatever requirements are mandatory with respect to the regulatory concerns of the people, the government, the system, and so on, all those requirements should be essentially fulfilled, and then accordingly, the mapping with respect to the supporting of documents, furnishing of the various reports, making the necessary compliances are needed to be undertaken, and they are needed to be fulfilled within the specified time period. Designing of management system requirements, processes, and roles and responsibility. So, whatever management system is into existence, one has to see that all those activities are being clearly defined, they have been set according to the requirements, and the processes and roles and responsibilities are being undertaken as and when the need arises. So, a proper design should be there into existence, and then accordingly, the activities needs to be initiated. And lastly, company-wide implementation, training, assessment, and continuous improvement. So the activity that you are going to undertake should be of a continuous nature, and it must be conducted at the department or that is the floor level as well as at the company level. So these particular process may be related to the micro perspective or to the macro perspective, and hence applicability to all the concerns is essentially required. Now let's understand what are the various components in the systems and processes. In terms of the systems and processes, there are around 12 operational management activities that is needed to be undertaken. That is the quality, the purchasing, the JIT that is just in time, the amount of inventory, the performance, the forecasting, the scheduling, the MRP that is material requirement planning, and lastly the facility layout along with TQM. All those components in the system and processes are related with how operational management activities can be conducted effectively. Let's take an example with respect to just-in-time or inventory. The concept of just-in-time focuses on the concept with respect to the availability of goods and services on the specified time period. So whenever there is a need, whenever there is a requirement of certain amount of raw material, that particular amount of raw material should be available on the specified time. So delivery of goods and services within the specified time period for the production activity is the concept of just-in-time. Material requirement planning, that is MRP. MRP focuses on the certain concept with respect to whatever goods and services or the material is being required that should be made available as per the need and as per the requirement of the respective departments. The stores department should have a proper coordination and control and communication with respect to the manufacturing department. The manufacturing department must have a control or a coordination or communication with respect to the finance department, with respect to the purchase department, and so on. And hence, based on those particular concerns, the MRP, that is material requirement planning, can be effectively identified, and then the series of activities can be conducted in a coordinated way. The concept of TQM, that is total quality management. Total quality management focuses on controlling the quality of product or the finished goods in the organization. Reduction of waste of the products, of the raw material, of the commodity is essentially required to be seen, and based on those concerns, the TQM needs to be implemented. Now let's look at the structural flow in the operation system and processes. The operation management activity is been majorly divided into three categories or three steps. Number one, the inputs. Number two, the operations. And number three, the output. The participants or the components of the input activities are the amount of capital that you have invested, the raw material that you have purchased, the machinery that is being used for manufacturing or producing those goods and services, and the workers, that is the shop floor people who are working for the production activity or the manufacturing activity. And hence, the input related to all those four activities is the base foundation, is the base or the foundation of the processes. In terms of the operations activity, the operations management activity is been related to the inventory, the supply chain management, the capacity or the strategy, the quality control, and the geography. It focuses on what is the composition or what is the availability of the goods and services, what processes are needed to be undertaken, and how those processes will be organized or managed with respect to the movement of goods and services from one department to another department. The last concept focuses, that is the structural flow, focuses on the output. With respect to the output, we have to see that what are the finished goods that have been produced or they have been manufactured, how the packaging of the goods and services is needed to be undertaken, the warehousing and storage facility with respect to when the goods are actually being manufactured or when they are actually being produced, where the goods will be stored, where the goods will be kept into go down and storage, and so on. And lastly, the distribution of the goods and services along with the services. So once the goods have been to be manufactured, it needs to be distributed to the end consumer or to the retailer. So based on the distribution chain, one has to move the goods and services from one level to another level. And hence, for those particular concern, distribution chain is essentially required. Now let's understand what do we mean by operations management systems and processes. The operation management system and processes is an incident prevention. So we have to see that whatever activities have been conducted, they have been conducted in an effective way, and we need to prevent any incident that may arise. That is, with respect to the availability of raw material, with respect to the changes in the policy, with respect to the changes in the production or the process cycle, and so on. Enhancing the safety culture. In order to see that the culture in the organization is very quite safe and beneficial to all the people or the employees in the organization or on the shop floor, the safety culture needs to be developed and it needs to be built. And for building or developing a safety environment or a particular culture, there should be an effective operations management and system and processes into existence. The next composition factor is the risk identification and management. At the several stages, initially, the operations manager or the department needs to identify what are the various risks that have been associated and how do you control or manage the risk that may arise over a period of time. Regulatory compliances with respect to the government, with respect to the customers, with respect to the suppliers, dealers, who are the external participants to the organization also is needed to be undertaken, and then accordingly all those compliances are needed to be fulfilled. The operational performance. Operational performance with respect to the increase or decrease in the quantity and quality of product, with respect to the requirement and need of raw material, all those activities are needed to be taken into account, and then the operational performance is needed to be judged. The next composition factor is the organizational collaboration. The collaboration focuses on the series of activities with respect to the what amount of goods and services will be made available and whether it will be delivered in the specified time frame or not. So a better collaboration between the warehouse, the supplier, the vendors, the dealers leads to a certain conclusion to the availability of raw material within the specified time period. And lastly, the concept of stakeholder management. There are various stakeholders in a business organization. Maybe it a customer, maybe it a supplier, maybe it a dealer, maybe it a government, maybe it an operational agencies, and so on. So, on in a term of an operation system and processes, we have to see and we have to take into account that all those stakeholders who have been included in the business organization, they have been satisfied, and whatever information, whatever control is been required, it has been completed in an effective way. Now let's see what operation system and control emphasizes. It emphasizes on the systems and processes which have been integrated of a certain nature, and it also focuses on the continuous and gradual increase in the performance. So the operations management always try to see that whatever activities are being undertaken, they are of a continuous nature and there is no redundancy or stoppage of goods and services in the transit. Another most profound findings from those particular concerns are the companies or organizations have many overlapping goals and targets, and it needs to be addressed with the effective management system into existence. So, when there is an effective management system into existence, all the activities will be conducted in a very well coordinated way, and accordingly, there will be a proper control and system into existence. Now let's understand what are the various four V's of the operations management. The first V is the volume, the next is the variety, the third is the variation, and lastly, the fourth is visibility. So, with respect to the volume, it deals with the quantity of goods and services that you are going to manufacture. With respect to the variety, it deals with the type of goods and services that you are using or that you are manufacturing and what will be the variety of goods and services that will be actually made available to the consumer. The variations focuses with the concept of availability of goods and services in different quantities or different terms. So a particular product may be created in a different qualitative terms and different quantitative terms, and hence it is called as the concept of variation. And lastly, the visibility. Visibility is the concept of availability of the product within the specified time period. That is, for example, if the product is needed to be available for a specific occasion and for the occasion that is required is 100 or a certain amount of quantity. So in this case, we have to understand that the product should be visible, it should be made available as and when it is been required and whenever the demand is generated. So in case in this particular particular module, we have understood what do we mean by operations management and how the functions of implementing the concept of operational system and control is needed to be applied in the organization. The operation system and process control, it focuses on the concept of applicability to both, that is the goods as well as to the services. The systems and processes are essentially important because it is a well coordinated, effective activity of conducting the activities in an effective way. So we have to understand, we have to see that all the activities that have been designed, that are being conducted in the organization are being there in a sequence way. So the functions of management with respect to the coordinating, planning, controlling and organizing the activities for the optimum utilization of resources is essentially required, and hence the organizational activities are needed to be done in an effective way. Now let's summarize what we have learned in this particular session. In this particular session, we have understood what do we mean by operations management and what is meant by operation system and processes. Further, we have seen what are the various steps that have been undertaken for the better implementation of operational control and activities. Then, lastly, we have seen what do we mean by 4 V's in operations, along with the structural flow of activities in the operational system and processes. I hope you must have enjoyed the learning. We'll stay connected and we'll stay tuned for the learning. Thank you.